What's up, guys? It's Tyler with Hooksets Are Free. Hope you're having a great night, good day, whenever it is that you're watching this video. Whether you're going to hop in live or you're watching on the replay. Hope you're having a great day. And yeah, it is Friday night, July 9th, 2021. So I've got my kids down to sleep. My wife is working, and I thought that I would hop on here. I've got a new webcam set up here and wanted to get you guys' thoughts about how the quality is compared to, say, what it normally is. I usually stream on my phone, but have a new webcam that's supposed to have pretty good resolution and decent audio as well, but I've never used it before, so honestly, I can't quite tell you what it looks like or sound like. So you got to tell me. Drop some comments in the chat right now and let me know, do you like it? Is it better, worse, or about the same? Because honestly, I'm only picking up a little bit of audio, and I can't tell. What's up, Justin? Hello to you as well. Can you hear me all right, man? It sounds or looks like my volume is fine, but maybe a little bit low. You tell me. And how's the volume sound? We're going to just chat for a little bit tonight, hang out. Again, first time trying this webcam. So, okay. I'll watch it on the replay later as well. And we'll just see whether I use this moving forward or not. It's a pretty wide angle, actually, compared to my phone. So I kind of like that. I'm going to hop on live on Instagram as well, even though quality is not as good there. So I will encourage people on Instagram to hop on over to YouTube just because that's where I'd prefer to be. But yeah, I figure we might as well get the chat going as much as possible. I do have, oh shoot, I wanted to answer some of Ron's questions. And Ron is, how you doing tonight, man? Me yesterday and today, and I have yet to get back to him. So Ron, I really apologize for not getting back to you just yet, but I'm happy to answer both of your questions. If you just repeat them back in the chat here. I was going to respond on my phone, but I thought I'd hop on here on Instagram as well. So I'm on both platforms right now. If you guys are hopping on Instagram, just know that you can go over to YouTube and the resolution's going to be better. What's up, Malachi? What's up, Chase? I'm on YouTube right now, and the chat is going there as well. So hop on over. I'll probably be streaming longer on YouTube than I am on Instagram. Probably a little bit better, but let's get into the topic of tonight's conversation. Sorry if I just cut out on YouTube. If that keeps happening, then I will probably hop off on Instagram just so that we don't have issues with a stable connection. So wanted to talk about the jackhammer chatterbait, and I should have brought down from the garage the one that I've got tied on to my rod right now, because I've been fishing this bait specifically in black and blue for the last week or so and been absolutely slaying the fish. So I've got some bass thumb. I will show you guys what it looks like. I did post on Instagram earlier today. For whatever reason, the resolution is almost better on my phone than it is on my webcam right now in terms of close-ups. So hopefully that's not necessarily an issue that we have moving forward. Okay, so that does focus for you. I can show you what the bait looks like up close. But if I showed you the one that I've got tied on, the paint on the blade is coming off almost entirely. The head is pretty destroyed. The skirt is getting there, but I've caught like 50 fish on it this past week. So I've gone night fishing a couple of times. What's up, Colin? To all of you on Instagram right now hopping in, what's up, guys? How you doing? If you want, feel free to hop on over to YouTube. I'll probably be streaming a little bit longer there, and the video quality and audio quality is a little bit better. So either way, doesn't quite matter to me. But just wanted to talk to you guys about the jackhammer chatterbait and how sweet it is. There is a place that I go night fishing fairly often in the summertime, and it's a little golf course pond, so I got to sneak in. Of course, the fish are going to bite a variety of presentations at a place like that that is not very pressured and where fishing is not encouraged. So it's hard to say whether the jackhammer is the deal there or not, but I have thrown a wide variety of presentations there, and it is what gets the job done best. So I caught probably 15 or so fish both times I went out at night this past week on the jackhammer alone. I only caught like one on the whopper plopper. Specifically, the whopper plopper 110 is what has been getting the job done for me better than anything else this year. And as you can see, this thing is nice and beat up. It has got teeth marks all over it. So I've had this bait for 2-3 seasons now, and it has really become my go-to. I will say that the 75 size as well has gotten quite the beating, and done a remarkable job for me too. So when I'm fishing early morning top water, I will throw the whopper plopper almost every time I go out. I will always have one tied on. It's kind of a must. But the jackhammer chatterbait has become kind of a day and night presentation for me, and one of my biggest confidence baits, period. So it was just by happenstance that I went fishing, not the morning after, but 2 mornings after going night fishing for the first time this past week, and I still had the jackhammer tied on, and brought that rod with me. And so I used it first thing in the morning and wrecked them on it at like 7 a.m. So we've had some rain here in Colorado, and so the water has dirtied up just a little bit. And so black and blue has been a great color combination to throw. And I will say, I was using the Kitech Swing Impact Swimbait, which is kind of the skinny and long version of that Swing Impact fat that everybody throws and knows about. I could probably pull out some of the Swing Impacts pretty easily. Let me see if I got them right here. So these are the Easy Shiners. Well, I thought I could pull them out pretty easily. I thought I had a dedicated box, and I know I do, to Swing Impacts, but I've got them in a lot of different sizes. And I don't know where that box is right now. So you guys probably know what bait I'm talking about. But what I do with that swim bait is cut the tail off. What's up, Fishing Fisher? How you doing tonight, man? So I cut the tail off of the Swing Impact swim bait and just fish it as kind of a straight tail worm / swim bait, which is a fantastic trailer. Great action on it. The only problem with it, especially on the jackhammer with its double wire keeper, is that really quickly. So I'll only get a couple of fish at most with that trailer. And so what I've had to do to get creative is kind of re-rig it without pulling it off of the keeper, because this keeper will destroy if you try to re-rig it. If you try to pull it off of the keeper, it will rip it completely. So what I've done, once it kind of tears down the shank of the hook, what I will do is just kind of thread it back through. I can't run it all the way through the bait, but I will just tuck it back through. This is a horrible bait to show you with, but I will do it just because it's sitting here. This is a lizard, but for example, I'll rig this like I would a standard trailer and just thread it all the way through for you and push it up over that keeper. And what happens is that after the first fish or two, this thing rips down and is like hanging off. So it doesn't want to stay straight anymore. It's essentially useless. So what I do in that case is then just bring the bait back up, essentially like I'm gonna Texas rig it, but then I will just pull it straight through, and then that bait is kind of sitting on top of the hook. And it generally works for another couple of fish. So that has been a little bit annoying in using that swing impact, which is a fantastic bait, by the way. See, I just destroyed this lizard in taking it back off the chatterbait, but that's part of what happens and part of what makes the jackhammer so great. So especially use Elaztech trailers. And this is a question that I answered of Ron Holly's earlier this week. Fishing Fisher, this chatterbait costs $16 US. So it's definitely not cheap. It is an expensive lure for sure. But what I like to do is pair it up with this Swimbait, which is the ZMan Diesel Minnows. So it's a 4-inch soft plastic swim bait made from Elaztech. So it's super durable. And they make them in all sorts of different colors. This is the black and blue laminate. And what's cool is I can actually rig this and show you guys right now, even though there's really no reason for me to do that because I've got the one that I've been fishing for the last 4 days or so still rigged on my rod. But the cool thing is with Elaztech, it's very hard to destroy it. So I can rig this thing and then pull it back off of a keeper that will destroy any other bait, and it won't ruin the Elaztech. So I'll just thread this thing about halfway down. What's wild about rigging this is it's very difficult to get up over the keeper, okay? What you have to do is essentially pull it by the neck of the plastic. Yank it up over that keeper, and then it will lock in place. So once it's on there, it is on there. It's not going to come off. And this profile is just perfect. So I am a huge fan. I think this 4-inch Diesel Minnows fits the chatterbait perfect. And keep in mind, I have not trimmed the skirt on this jig at all. And I probably would trim it just a little bit. I like my jig skirts to be just a little bit longer than at the bend of the hook. So straight out of the package, these come just a little bit long, but they're solid to fish just as is. But like I mentioned, what's cool is if you rig this wrong or you're done fishing it and you want to take the Elaztech trailer off, look at this. It's wanting to get destroyed as I'm trying to pull it off of here. But Elaztech is so tough that I can just force the issue and voila. This thing is still good to go for a lot longer, okay? Now, if you do that multiple times, it will start to hollow out the inside of the bait just because you are, tearing it, but it's so tough that you're not going to destroy the bait. You're not going to rip it apart, which is super, super cool. So I use the ZMan diesel minnows. I use the ZMan razor shads. Use the ZMan turbo craws a lot as chatterbait trailers. So here's the razor shads, which is essentially, just a straight tail with a ribbed body, or a segmented body, I should say, right? So this is going to have a very natural swimming action, but it's got a much thicker body. So this thing is not going to kick so much as swim behind the chatterbait, which there's a time and a place where you want just a little bit more subtle action. But what's cool about the diesel minnows is it has a pretty subtle kick itself. So it's not going to swing super wide, and it's not going to rise like a lot of other paddle tails. If you use a paddle tail swim bait on the back of a chatterbait, the issue with them is that tail kick, which is usually kind of straight behind or a little bit above the bait, is going to rise up significantly more and kind of ruin the action of the bait. So I generally do not recommend throwing paddle tail swim baits on the back of chatterbaits, but two tricks that you can do to still use a paddle tail swim bait is that you can rig them upside down so that the tail has a little bit more subtle of a kick and does not want to rise up. Or better yet, and what I do most frequently, is just cut off the boot tail. So that's what I've been doing with that Swing Impact swim bait, which is a great one. It's got a little bit more of like a worm profile, very skinny swim bait. And so I've been using that. And then the Turbo Craws is awesome. The new Goat is one that I'm going to be fiddling around with just a little bit more this season. I've stocked up on it quite a bit since it's become available. So I'll rig one of these up so you can see. And Ron, I'm sorry, let me answer your question. So again, with the Elaztech, you do have to grab it by the nose and pull that neck up over the keeper to get that keeper to go into the Elaztech and lock in place. So the ZMan Goat is a wicked trailer as well. This is a multi-purpose bait that you can use for so many different things. It's essentially the same thing as the Strike King Rage Tail Menace Grub, which for years has been one of my all-time favorite soft plastic baits, to the extent that I always have a dedicated box just to these baits and carry them in just about every color. So in this box, I've got watermelon red, Falcon Lake craw, blue craw, black and blue, bluegill, and white. So I kind of have a little bit of everything there. I use that blue craw in the same areas that I would use a green pumpkin, but same deal with that Menace Grub is that when you use it on a jackhammer, it's only going to last so long. And if and when you're ready to take it off, or if God forbid you rigged it wrong the first time, you're going to have to ruin the bait to take it off. So that's just part of the deal. However, with the Goat made from Elaztech, not a problem. So you can see I've got this rig just a little bit short, so it does have a slight bend to it, which to me is not a huge issue. But you never know. If I found that it was swimming a little bit awkwardly, I might go ahead and re-rig it, which, like I said, is an option when it comes to ZMan plastic. So, sorry I haven't responded to the comments. Looks like Wonk Fish is in here. What's up, dude? Remind me one more time what your first name is. I'm pretty sure I asked you before, but I don't remember your name, and I apologize for that. Ron asked about the Zako. The Zako is great, man. The Wonk says it really does look like the Zako, doesn't it? No, not the diesel minnows. It doesn't, but the razor shads does. The Kamikaze swim on from Big Bite Baits. There's a number of baits on the market that have that same profile as the Zako from Yamamoto, and the Zako is one of my favorites. Again, I have a dedicated box to just Zako trailers in like a handful of different colors. And I usually bring it with me when I'm fishing chatterbaits. So for years, it has been one of my confidence trailers on a chatterbait because of the profile. I really like how deep it is. And whereas that ZMan razor shads is a little bit wider, as I showed you on top. It has a wider profile to it, but it also has a deep belly. So very similar design with those. Looks like Justin just hopped on Instagram. There's only been a couple people in here on Instagram, and I'd rather just hop off of here and be able to pay full attention to YouTube and have my phone available in case I want to show you guys something on my phone, or I need to respond to a text message or something like that. So to those of you on Instagram, sorry about it, but I'm dipping out of here. If you want to continue hanging out, jump on over to YouTube. Check me out at Hooksets Are Free, and join the live stream there, okay? So, sorry about that, guys. Peyton. And yes, Ron, the Zako was designed for a chatterbait. However, some people will say, just like the folks who fish the razor shads, is that it's not only made for that. It was designed as that being kind of its specialty, but a lot of people fish it as like a soft jerkbait, and the Zako as like a swim bait, which is why they've now created the paddle tail Zako, which I just picked up recently. You guys saw me unbox that on a recent live stream, but you're right that's what it technically was designed for. And Peyton says, how about the 10,000 fish shimmer shad? Yeah, the shimmer shad is a paddle tail swim bait, right? That's not my favorite. In fact, I've never fished with it. I think it's an interesting design, but one that in general I've not had great success with in the past. It's got mylar inside the bait. So in my experience with baits like that in the past, when you thread a hook through the bait, that mylar can impede you rigging the hook straight on the bait because it's placed kind of right in the center as they're pouring the plastic. So I think it's a cool idea in that it gives off a lot of flash, hence the name shimmer. But in my opinion, it would be best fished like on a drop shot or a belly weighted swim bait hook, but I'm pretty sure they're small. So I would pretty much fish them on a drop shot, but I rarely drop swim, swim a drop shot presentation. It's usually not my my forte. Okay. Now, the 10,000 fish Yodo worm, on the other hand, is awesome. Great bait for a chatterbait trailer. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's what it was designed for. It looks kind of like some of the geek crack baits, and it's interesting for sure. I've had good success with it, even recently on the back of a Strike King Thunder Cricket. So I'm a fan of it, but the Yodo worm, not the shimmer shad. Okay, Matthew, what's up, dude? He said, I got some bass thumb in the middle of a damn tropical storm. Caught 4 bass on a depths swim jig. Berkeley Power Wiggler's been crushing it for weeks on that setup. Nice, man. That's a pretty advanced setup. Wicked, though. Good for you, dude. Got bass thumb from 4 fish, though, huh? Must have been some feisty fish. I've caught about 50 fish on this thumb in the past week. I wish it would focus for you, but it's not going to. I've got this one's a little bit torn up too. Yeah, so my thumb has been bleeding multiple times this week, and yeah, it's been a good week for sure. Caught a lot on the jackhammer chatterbait, as I was mentioning, in the black and blue. Probably 30 of those 50 fish, or so. Peyton says, any good tube brands or colors that I should check out? Going fishing for smallies tomorrow, but I've never used a tube before. Sure, dude. Sure. There are a couple of tubes that I really like. Oh no, my son's starting to wake up a little bit. Hopefully, he doesn't keep ramping up and get really upset, but you never know. So I saw that Matthew mentioned that Kitech tubes are awesome, and yes, they are. In fact, they are what I recommend first to a lot of people, okay? However, if you're going fishing tomorrow, you're probably not going to be able to find the Kitech tubes in a store, okay? They're very difficult to find. You'd have to buy them from Tackle Warehouse, from Discount Tackle, the Hookup Tackle, wherever you fish online. But Kitech tubes are super cool because they are salty core tubes. These are not hollow body tubes, but rather are totally filled with salt. So they've got a dual density situation. They've got a durable outside and then a totally salt inside, and they're plugged on the butt. So easy to rig in multiple ways. In fact, I thought maybe I had one of these rigged up to show you. What's really cool about these is that plugged butt. So check this out, is that I have this tube rigged backwards, okay? So literally, as I fish it, it's going to pulse, it's going to swim backwards, and then it's going to fall forward. So this is essentially a stupid tube that is easy to rig without any like funky setup. You don't have to use an internal weight with these baits because they're already filled. So these tubes weigh something in the ballpark of a ½ ounce on their own, which is really awesome. But it's a typical tube. You need to use a tube jig or Texas rig, and it depends on the situation that you're in, how you're going to rig that. So my go-to tube for just a standard tube jig, and what I don't use when what I use when I'm not using the Kitechs most of the time, is the Strike King coffee tubes. You should be able to find these wherever you're shopping if you're buying tubes. and they're super high quality. So look out for these guys. They're poured well, they rig well, and they fish fairly durable. They've got a solid head, and they're made in some classic colors. They also have that coffee scent that, you know, the entire Rage Tail line of baits has, and I'm a big fan of it. So I throw these in really 3 different colors. I like to keep it natural when it comes to tube fishing for the most part, unless I'm bed fishing. But yeah, Peyton, you should get the coffee tubes if they're available to you. So I throw them in a standard green pumpkin. That color that I showed you is green pumpkin, purple, and gold flake. I don't know why that's all worn off. Purple and gold flake, underrated. And then lastly, natural goby, which is a little bit of like a more standard green. It's a half and half color. I've actually got this one rigged on a weedless tube jig, which is not the easiest thing to rig up, but you can see the color here is like a natural green and then more of like a pearlish blue belly to it. So really like that natural goby color as well. Those would be the main ones that I would recommend. And then one other that's kind of sneaky, you know, is either the Berkley power tubes, like the power bait tubes, or yeah, these are the old ones, the Havoc smash tubes. So I don't know if Berkley's making a lot of this stuff in the Havoc line anymore, but the smash tube is cool because it's got this flat, it's like it's already smashed. So it's flatter on one side and wider. It's like the tube was supposed to be round and they squished it down, smashed it. It's a little bit longer in profile, super salty, but they make them in these two-tone colors. So this color here is called green sunfish, and you know, it's got copper flake, and it is green with like a brown on the inside. So I like that those are two-toned. But yeah, those are pretty much the main tubes that I throw. I don't mix it up all that much when it comes to tube baits, to be honest with you. Just for future reference, if you can get your hands on some of the Kitech salty core tubes, you won't be pissed. So yeah, in terms of rigging, I say a Texas rig is probably your best bet. You know, a lot of people would flip a tube, Texas rig a tube, peg your weight, and or don't peg your weight and let it kind of act like a free rig. Let that weight get to the bottom first, and the tube will spiral down. But it's going to stay more weedless for you that way. You're going to break off a reasonable amount due to snags when it comes to tube fishing with a standard tube jig. It's just part of the deal. And it can be annoying sometimes. So anyway, good luck to you, man. I hope you catch them good tomorrow. Ron, I hope that kind of answered your question. I fish my tubes kind of 3 different ways. So depending on the tube, if I'm using the Kitech, I will rig it backwards just because it's a lot easier to do with that bait specifically. And you get a different action where it looks like a fleeing crawdad as you're working the bait, and then it will kind of slide. I think Kitech calls it backsliding. So you can fish into laydowns and you know, more heavy cover, and you can pitch the bait there and it will go away from you. And so then as you work the bait, it will pulse back like a fleeing crawdad, and then it will glide back in. So really cool way to fish a tube. But in general, the 2 most typical ways to rig a tube are either on a standard tube jig with that weighted head inside. So pretty simple deal. You're just gonna, wet the lead and shove it into the nose of the tube and pop the line tie out and fish it like that, exposed. And you're gonna, most of the time, you're gonna crack the tube, rip it off of the bottom, and then it's gonna twirl down to the bottom and settle there. And you just pause it for a little bit and then crack it up. Because if you're dragging a tube on the bottom, most of the time you're going to fish a tube around rocks. And the issue with that is you're going to get hung up really quickly and frequently, and you're going to lose a lot of baits. So otherwise, a tube makes a great Texas rig bait. Again, it's one of those underrated, just like old school baits that works well as a crawfish and bait fish imitator. So I do highly recommend fishing a tube, and you can Texas rig a tube just like normal. Like I said, that Strike King coffee tube comes with a little bit of a solid nose to hold the line tie of a hook. So you can just throw on a bullet weight and then Texas rig that bait like normal. And the cool thing is, because they're hollow in the body, you're going to have a fantastic hookup ratio with a tube compared to another bait that is going to have a little bit more of a solid body. So I would use an EWG style hook, go through and then Texpose it on the way back. But again, a lot of people flip a tube and would use like a standard flipping style hook and just leave the hook inside the bait, just barely touching that back wall, not piercing it through. So sorry to go off on a little bit of a tangent there, guys. Matthew says they had some sharp ass teeth. I don't know why they have such large teeth. They're like needles. Now I've been catching 5 or 6 fish a day. Got bass done from that. Nice. But fishing from the bank, no break. I hear you, dude. I wanted to mention bass teeth, right? So, gosh, the lighting's too bright for you to be able to see how wrecked my thumb is. Go follow me on Instagram. Check out my post from today. You'll be able to see it's a little bit of a mess. But anyway, the teeth on fish is an interesting topic and one that we could talk about for a while. But here's the gist of it, is that bass with sharp teeth are feeding on bait fish, just period. Like they rarely are feeding on the bottom. They're not eating crawfish. They're not eating worms, bugs. They're not down on the bottom grinding their teeth on anything. So if they're just eating bait fish, as you know, they tend to eat them head first and whole. So their teeth are going to stay raw, essentially. So that's an interesting indicator, is when you catch a bass. A lot of people would want to look inside, check to see if the fish is spitting anything up, to see what the bait looks like. You could tell the size of the bait, the color profile, that kind of thing. You can tell from, the bottom lip, that if it's red, they've been eating crawdads. But a cool little indicator is that if they've got really sharp teeth, that means that they're pretty much exclusively feeding on bait fish. Okay. Neil Bone, what up, bro? It's really hard for you to find tubes that you can actually find zoom tubes at Walmart. Interesting. I don't think I knew that, man. I haven't seen a zoom tube in a long time. I'll have to keep an eye out for that. No problem, Peyton. He said, is a scrounger jig head a lot like a chatterbait, or is it a bit different? Because I may try them if they're good. Some people would say that they're similar, but no. A scrounger, and I've tried fishing a scrounger the other day, and didn't end up getting any bites on it, but I've got some interesting insights since I've been fishing both this week. The chatterbait is going to have a tighter action. Okay. The blade is going to go side to side. It's not going to make the bait roll. It's just going to make it vibrate. It's going to put a lot of sound out, and it's going to displace some water for sure. It's not nearly as stealthy as like a swim jig or anything like that, but the blade on the chatterbait is what's going to make the noise. So every chatterbait is a little bit different, and the reason a jackhammer chatterbait is so popular is because it is loud as all get out. It starts up faster than any other blade on the market. It's super tough because it's stainless steel, but it travels a little bit further and it hits the head both times. Every time that it goes side to side, it is actually clacking off the head of the jig. So it makes a lot of noise in the water, but it swims a bit more true and natural. Okay. The scrounger, on the other hand, has a plastic lip to it that sticks over the hook. So the scrounger theoretically would be a little bit more weedless because that lip is going to hang a little bit higher. Man, I know I got my scroungers in here, but the one that I was fishing is upstairs in the garage in my bag. But you know, the best example that I can give to you is this naked Rage Blade, which is the Strike King bladed jig called the Rage Blade, but they made it in a clear blade version. So this was years before ZMan came out with the Stealth Blade. But this kind of looks like a scrounger. So imagine it's actually blocking the hook. So theoretically, it should be more weedless. And that's one of the reasons that I like the Rage Blade, is that it actually will allow this bait to come up and over cover a bit better. So you can fish the Rage Blade around wood more than you could fish like any other bladed jig on the market. But the scrounger is quiet because it doesn't have metal. There's no clacking going on, so it's just moving water. But the other thing is that it makes the bait roll side to side. So it has a very different action on it, and that's why people tend to throw straight tail worms or straight tail swim baits on the back of them. You know, with a longer, thinner, tapered tail, as opposed to like a chatterbait style trailer. So I wouldn't throw a chatterbait trailer on the back of a scrounger, but I would throw a scrounger bait on the back of a chatterbait, if that makes sense. The two most popular scrounger baits on the market are the Hog Farmer Spunk Shad and the Castaic Jerky J. Both of them have like a 2 or 3 inch long, super thin tail on the back, and then just a solid body on the front. So anyway, it's a totally different presentation in how it swims. It's a little bit more erratic on a straight swim. The scrounger is, but it's quieter and it's going to move a little bit more water. So in terms of what it does, it's a bit different, but it also will stay down at depth better than a chatterbait will. A chatterbait wants to rise a little bit more naturally. So if you're fishing a chatterbait fast, it will come up in the water column. However, a scrounger on a straight retrieve will keep its depth quite a bit better. And that's, you know, the main reason why guys are fishing scroungers on ledges more so than chatterbaits. But chatterbaits have evolved a little bit over the years. Certain ones like the jackhammer do tend to stay down a little bit better and more consistent than others. And now they make them in a 3/4 and a 1 1/4 ounce size. So, yeah. Matthew says, have you ever tried it on a large Ned rig? They work very well too. What are you talking about? A tube on a Ned rig? That would be an interesting setup. Although I don't see it being all that different than just like a tube jig, right? Aside from the jig head being on the outside of the bait instead of internally. So no, I haven't tried it, but I could see it being effective. The only issue with throwing a tube, especially the Kitech, is that it's going to lay down, right? Most of the Ned rigs that I throw, I like to use buoyant soft plastics as opposed to super salty soft plastics. Everybody has a little bit of a different opinion on that. You know, Berkeley's coming out with the new Little General Ned rig bait, which I don't really see the point of. I know they're releasing it in some colors that are a little bit more friendly to the Ned rig and finesse presentations, but the General is a super salty stick bait. So I don't really see how it's going to be any different than if you just took a 6-inch General and cut it in half, or a 4 or 5-inch General and cut it down. But anyway, yeah. Neil says you can always slip a casting sinker inside the tube and then take your hook and hook it through the opening. Yeah, dude, I've got something I want to show you guys. So, Ron, here's one more thing that I didn't mention. And Neil, I appreciate you bringing it up. But you can buy these. Focus for me, buddy. These are the Gary Yamamoto snag-free weights. These are tube weights that are designed to go inside your tube. And so you just shove it straight up into the nose. This thing goes all the way into the nose of the bait. So it's going to be weighted at the front. And then, well, or you could do it either way. You could do it that way if you're going to rig it stupid style, or you just set this right in the back of the tube. And it might want to fall out initially, but after you rig it, it won't. Texas rig the tube, and as you're bringing the hook through the back of the bait before it lays down and you expose it, you bring it through this hole. So then the weight is going to be in the back, and it's going to be, it'll have just a little bit different of a fall to it, of course, with it being weighted in the back. So it's not going to spiral quite the same as a standard tube jig or a standard Texas rig, but I do like that that style of weight. And that's a good point that you make, Neil. And I'll tell you what, these lead weights are super cheap. You can get them for like $2, and I don't know, 10 in a pack or something like that. So Gary Yamamoto snag free weights. This is a 3/16 ounce size, which is right at about what my preferred weight is most of the time when I'm fishing a light Texas rig or a tube, if I can get away with it. Of course, if you're fishing deep water, or the fish are either lethargic and need you have to get them with a reaction, and you're going to crack the bait really hard off the bottom, then you might want to go heavier. But for the most part, I like to stay as light as possible with almost every single application when it comes to weights. And Neil, I appreciate the compliment on the setup, man. How do you like the webcam tonight? How is the video quality and the audio quality for you guys? Can you guys notice there's only a couple of you in here that have been on in the past or recently? Can you tell a difference in the video quality or the sound quality? Now, it is a wider setup, so I'm a little bit closer to the camera than I would typically be. You can see a little bit more of my wall. You know, if I went up, whoop, you can just see where it ends. So you can see almost everything that I've got hanging on this pegboard behind me, this one pegboard. It's not the only pegboard I've got. And of course, these aren't the only boxes that I've got. I've got boxes in here, got boxes all in this room. But Ron says it's a bit grainy. Dude, I should be streaming in high def. See if you can change your settings, Ron, on YouTube. Under the video, you should be able to change your settings. See if you can go up to 1080p or 4K, because I didn't change the settings, but they should automatically be in high def. Doesn't look bad in 1080. Okay. All right. Well, whatever. Again, I'm going to watch back on the replay just to see what it looks like. Yeah, and Ron, maybe your glasses are dirty, man. I don't know. Yamamoto cheap. Do they go in the same sentence? Typically not, especially when you're talking about salty, soft plastic baits. But when you're talking about hardware, when you're talking about hard baits, Yamamoto is actually very reasonable. Yamamoto makes buzz baits that are like $7 a pop. Yamamoto makes jig heads and hooks and a bunch of other stuff. I think even jigs that are all very reasonably priced. Maybe they make some hard baits and it's not like JDM prices, as you would think, given how pricey their soft plastics are. So anyway, little out of focus. Well, that's too bad. No, you're absolutely right, Matthew. Yamamoto is not expensive compared to Depths or Megabass. That's because it's domestic. It's not JDM. Depths and Megabass, OSP, Evergreen, all of the JDM companies that make their baits in Japan are going to charge a lot. That just is what it is. You're going to pay more. So while we're kind of on the topic, I've got a little bit of a package here. Hate to say it, but I pulled the trigger on another little something. This was a 4th of July sale at the Hookup Tackle. Okay. So I only picked up 4 baits, but I did spend like $60 on them. What I could tell you about your camera, no one's going to watch this and think, wow, that looks bad. Let me move on. Well, good. I appreciate that. Yeah, Matthew's spending money at the Hookup Tackle. It was 15% off of everything that can be discounted. Of course, Megabass, Jackal, a bunch of other companies out there have minimum advertised prices that cannot be discounted like ever. So you couldn't save the money on those. But I did pick up just a couple things. First is the Geek Rack Bellows Gill. Okay. I've talked about this bait somewhat recently. And I'm almost out of the pack that I had bought for this year. Initially, I bought the 3.8-inch size, and it has done me quite well. I will say, though, it is a largemouth bait almost exclusively because at 4 inches long, it has a very wide profile, and it's a pretty big bait. So I've been throwing it mostly weightless on a Texas rig, but also on a Tokyo rig, on a drop shot. I've kind of mixed it up a little bit, and I find that the bait in general catches fish pretty dang well. I like it. I don't know why Ben at the Hookup Tackle isn't a fan of Geek Rack, but whatever. That's not my problem. I'm not going to let him sway me on everything. So I like the 3.8-inch, but I've been fishing around smallies at one of the places that I fish pretty frequently. And they have bit the bait a lot, but they can't seem to get the entire thing in their mouth. So I decided to pick up the 2.8-inch version, which, as you can see, is a much smaller profile. So this, in my opinion, will be a much better drop shot bait. It'll still be great on a weightless Texas rig, weighted Texas rig, Tokyo rig, kind of however you want to fish it. But I think this will be a little bit easier for smallies to get. So again, still pretty wide. It's probably a inch or a little bit more wide. I love the way that this thing swims in the water. I've been very impressed. Now, durability is not the best, as you would suspect. But I have managed to get a couple of fish per bait out of these simply by rigging them upside down. Or like I said, rigging it differently. If it's starting to rip, then I will fish it on a drop shot, and I will just nose hook it a little bit behind the nose of the bait that is not already ripped up. So I've been able to extend the life out of these just a little bit, but the bellows gill is a great bait. I do recommend it. This is green pumpkin chartreuse. So rigging it upside down, I don't know. I had a straight green pumpkin of the 3.8, and I think I still have one, if not maybe two, left in the package. So it's not totally gone, but I'm a fan of the bellows gill. Okay, I'll say it. Other thing that I got, and I got 3 of them that I did not already have in my top water walking bait box, was none other than the Teckle Kick Knocker. Okay, the Kick Knocker. Yeah, the focus is a little bit of an issue. So I apologize. Matthew says, I think that's just a thing with him and Jeff. He calls it geek crap. G crap. So I don't know if it's just an inside joke with him and Jeff or what, but it seems like Ben is actually not a fan. And maybe he is. Maybe I could be wrong, but I'm kind of under the impression that he's not a fan of their baits. So whatever, it doesn't matter. Neil says, I was wondering if you can trim a missile bait's D-bomb into that profile, but I think we would have problems with the little tickle tail at the end. So it's a little bit similar, but a D-bomb is not going to be nearly as flimsy. You know, a D-bomb does have a solid body, though it's a little bit ribbed. It's not nearly as soft or bendy as the bellows gill. So I like where your head's at in thinking how to create a similar deal. The one bait that I mentioned earlier that is somewhat similar, of course I don't know where it is right now, is the 10,000 fish Yoda worm. And I think they make it in a couple different sizes, but the Yoda worm is pretty similar in profile, though it's longer. It's more of like a bait fish. Well, whatever. The bellows gill is supposed to be like a bluegill, but the bluegill is more stubby, right? And the Yoda worm is a little bit longer, wormy. So it's kind of a hybrid situation, made to be a trailer on a chatterbait and on a spinnerbait, but also can be fished as a standalone bait, like a soft jerk bait, and something kind of like the bellows gill. So I would look at that, but yeah, the D-bomb, you're not going to get that tail if you just cut off the pinchers, man. You're just going to get the body, which, whatever, you might still get bites on it. There are a lot of baits out there that are like dead action style baits that do well. You know, the Depths cover scat has been super popular the last year or two, and it literally, it's called the cover scat. It looks kind of like a piece of dog poo. Now it's tapered. It's got some really cool design features to it that make it a good bait. But it looks like a piece of poo, dude. So interesting. Okay, so tackle kick knocker. Matthew says, well then maybe. And yeah, I still buy them. I'll still buy them. Love the Spiron. Interesting. I haven't tried that bait. It does seem interesting for sure. Especially because it's going to slow spiral down to the bottom. Not like a tube that's just going to like twist your line up and you know, cause a reaction. It's just going to mesmerize the fish as it kind of swims its way to the bottom. So, guys, the Tackle Kick Knocker is a topwater walking bait that, if you guys didn't already know, the relationship between Tackle and Reaction Innovations, I believe it's Hideki, is his first name, is the bait designer for both companies. And Reaction Innovations had the Vixen topwater walking bait, which was raved about and was a huge producer, kind of #1 in a lot of people's books until it went discontinued. I want to say that there was like a fire or something and the molds got destroyed. But that bait went out of production, came back into production like 5-7 years ago, and then went back out of production. For whatever reason, it has just been not consistent. Okay. But same guy who designed that bait designed this bait. I think he's a part owner or the majority owner in Tackle. So the Kick Knocker walking bait is essentially the Vixen. It's the same mold, same sound, same thickness of plastic. And I'll see if you can see on the inside of the bait. You see that knocker, that roller ball in the back. And then you might not be able to see. Oh, you can see there are little plastic or glass balls right in the nose of the bait. And that is all that's making the noise. However, this is an extremely loud and hollow sounding walking bait. So it's got a unique shape to it that there are a couple of baits on the market that were designed after the Vixen. So profile-wise, it's not the most unique thing. However, it does have a really good, smooth walking action to it. So it's loud and it will cover a lot of water. So this thing can be fished fast. And the cool thing about it, unlike some other walking baits like the Evergreen Shower Blows, is that this thing will travel a decent amount of space forward, as well as having a pretty good side-to-side movement as well. So again, you can cover a lot of water with this thing. It's not going to spit a ton, but it will walk really smooth and cover water quickly. So you can fish this thing fast when you're looking to find fish. Now, in retrospect, I regret not getting one more of that standard size. However, I was most curious about the Kick Knocker Pup. This is the junior size of that same bait, okay? So I picked up 2 of the Pup and 1 of the regular size. What I like about this is that it's a downsized version. This is essentially like the Super Spook Junior, the Sexy Dog Junior, the Evergreen Shower Blows 105. This is a small size walking bait, but like the Evergreen Shower Blows 105, this thing has 3 treble hooks on it. Absolutely love that. That's rare when it comes to small downsized walking baits. So you can hear that it's got the same sound, just a little higher pitch. And so especially on pressured bodies of water or where the bait is smaller, this pup is going to do a little bit more damage. Or when I'm fishing around those smallies I've been around recently. So that's kind of where my head was at when I picked these guys up and ultimately decided on the pups. So this first color, both of these colors are exclusive colors to the hookup tackle, and I love them. You know, this is called Saki Bomber. As you can tell, it's almost like the Megabass color that I am in love with, which is Matte Shad, which I've actually got that trick darter that I opened a week or two ago from Cabela's. So I'll just show you it as a comparison. So you can see it's kind of got that like brown fades to pearl with a little bit of purple on it. The Saki Bomber is kind of that same concept. A little bit more yellow, but pretty similar deal as that Matte Shad. Now this color is called White Walker, and it is wicked. This lighting won't do it justice, but it's got that blue eye. It's got a chartreuse nose, and then it's got this crackle pattern white. It's beautiful. So really like that. These baits were not cheap though. So I got the 3 walking baits, which run for between $20 and $22 a piece, and the pack of Bellows Gills after 15% off. I don't know, it was 60 or 65 bucks, something like that. So that's all I picked up in that tiny little order from the hookup. But happy to add these walking baits to my arsenal because otherwise I do have a lot of the walking baits in my box that have been on my wish list for a long time. I would just say the Vixen and the Kick Knocker from Teckle have been kind of on my wish list and just hard to pull the trigger on, because the Vixen you have to buy secondhand and you're going to pay an arm and a leg to acquire, which is just annoying and unfortunate. And there's so many knockoffs on the market these days, kind of like OG Wiggleworts. They're so hard to find and acquire that a lot of people will buy knockoffs and then paint them, because what's popular is that people will buy real OG Wiggleworts, real OG Vixens that have been fished and are beat up, and they'll just change the hooks. They will send it to somebody to have it repainted, and then it's essentially good as new. So sometimes it's hard to tell what's a knockoff and what's not. You know what I mean? Neil says Gene LaRue Dock Shooter is the closest bait I had to the Bellows Gill. Interesting. I don't even know that bait, man. And yeah, the Yoda worm is longer, but you think about it, it's a 4-inch bait, and I had the Bellows Gill in the 3.8 inch. So it's just the Bellows Gill is a wider bait, and it tapers right at the end. The tail is much shorter, and that Yoda worm is not as wide, and it tapers earlier and has a longer tail to it. So yeah, the pup does look good, man. How do I feel about barbs being on the outside of the treble hooks with Megabass? Do I think that helps a lot with hookups, or does it hook them better when they slash at it? You know, that's a good question. I don't think it hooks them when they slash at it. I just think it helps fish stay pinned a little bit better. It's an extra barb. So I think they're good hooks. Period. I don't change them out. A lot of people are weirdly picky about them. Think that they're brittle or they bend out too easily. Things like that. I am not one of those people who messes around, especially when it comes to jerk baits. In switching out stock treble hooks, unless I know that they're trash. In which case, then I will go to something that is very similar in gauge of wire and weight, so that I'm not really altering the way that that bait is supposed to act in the water. That's not something I do. So I think the out barb hooks are solid. The only issue that people have in bending them out is that they're not using the right gear, right? They're probably using too heavy of line, and they're probably using too heavy of a rod. So they're horsing those fish more than they should be, and their drag is too tight. So that can really be an issue with any hooks, unless you're using hooks that are a much heavier gauge in wire. But to be honest, the Megabass baits are dialed in and do not need to be messed with. So if you mess with them, you run the risk of the action of the bait changing altogether. And that's not something that I'm interested or willing to do, quite frankly. Matthew says, I love the Megabass Dog X Junior Kawaii. Dude, don't get me wanting. That was one that was in my cart from the hookup like a month or two ago. I was very tempted to get it. There's also a popper style bait that is more of a saltwater bait, but that Megabass makes. It's called the Swing Hot. So the Swing Hot and the Dog X Junior Kawaii were ones that I was very interested in picking up, but did not. They're almost just a little bit too specialty for my preference. If I'm not mistaken, that Kawaii is silent, right? And it's a really small one, has a more subtle action, meant to be walked quicker. If I'm not mistaken, you tell me. But there's a reason I didn't pull the trigger on that one. Said I got those new DRT out barb hooks. They're scary sharp and sticky. And out barb helps with the penetration, acts like a needle, which helps penetrate with less force. Yeah, I would say I agree with that. Put them on my K9 and my Ghost, and you're not bending them out. Never bend my Megabass treble hooks ever, and landed a 6.8 pounder on them. Nice, dude. Baller. Neil says, I agree with you there. A lot of people fish too heavy of setups for baits that they shouldn't be. Really liked it. The Berkeley Fusion 19 hooks, never had any problems with them. They're thin wire treble hooks. Stay solid for me. Yeah, man. Those Fusion 19s are really good. They're not all thin wire. I mean, right? The Berkeley Chapo comes with Fusion 19 hooks. They're just the bigger hooks, right? So I agree. A lot of those Fusion 19 trebles that are smaller are a pretty fine wire, but these are either a size 4 or 2, pretty big and pretty standard. I wouldn't say beefy, but I would definitely not say thin either. So, yeah, this is the Chapo 105. And so, of course, on the smaller size 90, they're going to have smaller hooks in like a size 6 probably. And the larger 120 would be either the same size as these or one step up in like a size 2 if this is a 4. So anyway, I also really like the Fusion 19 hooks. Think that they are super high quality, especially for the price. Good hooks, man. Matthew said, yep, but I throw them on my regular bait casting gear and it walks so nice. Sinks slowly, so when you pause and then jerk it again, hops out of the water like a fleeing minnow. Yeah. Okay, so I did remember that bait, right? Seems very cool to me, and I'm interested in it, but didn't pull the trigger because around the time that I was thinking about that, I also decided to add these to my cart, and I ended up buying these. This is the Jackal Riser. So just reminded me a little bit too much. Very, I don't want to say similar bait because this is not a walking bait, but, the riser it's a topwater bait, but you fish it on a straight retrieve, and this thing skitters across the surface. It is a sinking bait, so you can't really kill it like you would a walking bait, like you do with that Kawaii. But reminded me of the same type of application, same type of presentation to the fish of like a fleeing small bait fish that's getting away, jumping out of the water, same type of deal. So yeah. The Riser 009 is loud as hell compared to the 07. Yeah, this is the 07. I've got two of the 07s. All right, guys, I've been on here for an hour and 17 minutes. My son is no longer crying, but I feel like I shouldn't be on here too much longer. Ask a question, say something. Let's chat for just a couple more minutes before I dip out of here, and then I'm going to head out for the night. There's a chance that I'll be on tomorrow night again. However, I will probably be paying attention to the UFC fight. And that's a reason that I really wanted to get on here tonight, just because I don't know for sure if I'll be on tomorrow. Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier trilogy is tomorrow night. And I'm not going to buy the pay-per-view, but I will pay attention round by round to what's happening. And there are a few people that I like to watch on YouTube or follow on social media that will give kind of play-by-plays and updates as to how the fight is going. So, yeah, I will be paying attention to the fight tomorrow night. Matthew says, have you ever used the Butch Brown thumper tail from Optimum? No, dude. Now, remind me, is that the pretty fat soft plastic swim bait that has a treble hook on top? Is it a line through? Because I've definitely seen it, but not really seen a reason to pick it up. I've got some line throughs, especially that are top hook versions, and haven't really seen a reason to get it. And maybe it's just that I don't know enough about it, know that the reasons that I should have it, but that's just me. Neil says, what state do you live in? I'm in Colorado. I'm in the greater Denver area of Colorado. Love it here. So, yeah, most people here in Colorado are trout fishermen, fly fishermen, and I am too. But just kind of got that itch and addicted to bass fishing like 5 or 6 years ago, and have really become obsessed. So I bass fish most of the time, and then I go trout fishing with family, or when I'm up in the mountains at one of our two places up there, where I can really have preferred access to top quality trout fishing, where I can fish on a river or a stream and fly fish the way that I want to. I don't usually fly fish at lakes or ponds. So, yeah, here I'm using traditional bass gear. I'm using a bait caster 85% of the time, and a spinning rod 15 to 20% of the time. Now, given that I've been fishing for smallies at one reservoir here a fair amount this year, I have had a spinning rod with me most of the time. Been fishing a drop shot kind of a lot this year, to be honest. Ron says, I ordered an O-ring tool. Do I need a different one for the Ocho Worm 6-inch? You shouldn't. I was going to respond to that text today and ask you and just say, so long as it's the 5-inch, you definitely don't. But if it's a 6-inch Ocho, a standard O-ring might be a little tight. Now, you could get away with it, right? Just like you could get away with not using an O-ring. Not that big of a deal, but don't go getting a new O-ring tool just yet, right? Try the one that you've got on your 6-inch Ochos and see how that looks. It'll probably be constricting the bait a bit. So only issue there is if it's really doing that too much, it could end up like cutting the bait in half, but not the end of the world, right? I mean, you'd end up having a similar issue where you'd actually just lose the bait altogether if you're not using an O-ring. A lot of times when you're fighting a fish or you set the hook and even miss a fish, you're going to rip the hook right out of the bait. So, you know, a 6-inch Ocho, after it rips in half, could be fished as a decent Ned rig or drop shot bait. Of course, it's going to be one that sinks, but and a 3-inch Senko has its time and place too. Wacky rig drop shot. Think about that. Matthew says they're kind of fat and not the line through, but with the treble hook on the head. Oh, right on the the front, like the forehead. Okay. With a wire leader, more for fish that hit the head. Yeah. Again, I haven't really seen or heard enough things to really motivate me to get that bait. But in my experience, most fish are eating swim baits head first anyway. Some of them will come at it and swipe it or hit it straight from the side and get, you know, a mouthful of trebles if you're using a hard swim bait. But I find that most of the time, at least in real life, when they're eating a bait, they're eating it head first. That's really the only way that they can properly digest it. So you say it's meant to be fished slowly on bottom, barely off the bottom. Heard they catch beast fish for no reason, so I had to scoop one. Yeah, I hear you. Well, Butch Brown, that's what he does, is catch beasts, dude. 15, 17, absolutely giant fish. So it doesn't matter whether he's fishing a Huddleston or an Optimum Baits, anything, quite frankly, that dude catches giant fish. Neil says, well, you've accumulated quite a bit over the time. I was that way as well. I was more of a multi-species fisherman. Nice. Right on. I still do a lot of multi-species fishing, quite honestly, and have a lot of gear for that as well. But it's just not what I prefer to do. I'd rather catch a whole bunch of, 2-pound bass than a whole bunch of, 5-inch bluegills. And the reason I mention those sizes is that's kind of like middle of the road. There's a lot of small bass here in Colorado, but there's a lot of decent bass as well. We don't really have giant anything other than trout per se in terms of what's catchable. Say, I don't know how to fly fish, but I love fishing rivers. Nice, dude. Spinning rods are very necessary for sure. The drag on them is just so good. Totally agree. I will occasionally use a spinning rod in the same situation that I will fly fish, but I'll really only whip that out if I can't get them to eat flies. Um, I'm struggling with the presentation, with ticking bottom. The fish are super pressured, and I'm just struggling to get bites. Then I will whip out a spinning rod, and specifically the Dynamic Lures HD Trout jerk bait, like 75% of the time. Um, there are a bunch of other baits that I will throw too, but that is like my starting point most of the time, and it almost always gets the job done. Um, Absolutely killer little 2-inch jerk bait that is sinking, has very good action, very good sound, was made here in Colorado, and is killer as a multi-species lure for river fishing in current. So look into that bait, Neil. You should. Said a little cheap budget. Budget way to go is go to a hardware store and get heat shrink tubing. Comes in all different sizes. You can cut it down to your size. Um, that stuff is tough. Yeah, no, that's good advice for Ron. You can do that for sure. Get some heat shrink tubing and use that instead of O-rings. But it's not like O-rings are really expensive as it is. So Neil says, I've got some nice slabs near me, and the crappie are pretty damn big. Good for you, man. Yeah, we've got some decent crappie, but you know, I've caught a couple like 8 to 10 inchers this year. Nothing absolutely giant, right? And you know, the bluegill can get up to 7 or 8 inches in some of the places that I fish, but it seems that over the years, the population of big bluegill has been dwindling. Ron says, have you checked out the Colorado Custom Lures? No, I have not. I might need to do that. Ron, I will check out your text. I know that I need to get back to you. I know you were mostly, I answered one of your questions, but I will get back to you. Oh, you were asking about swim baits, and I wanted to talk about that tonight, but that could be a rabbit hole that we go down for a long time, and one that might be better for me to respond to you now, and then for us to do a stream on later, where I'm actually showing them up close and kind of breaking them down, because I use a bunch of different swim baits, and it also depends on what you mean, because I assume you're just talking about small-ish paddle tail swim baits. You know, anything that's kind of in this range, from Kitech to Megabass to 6 cents to Jackal in general, but not going, you know, big on like 7 and 8 and 9-inch soft plastic baits. And I assume you're not talking about hard baits either, but again, that's something to clarify and talk about. So I'll hit you up. Guys, 7 people in here right now, 8 thumbs up. I appreciate you guys' time and willingness to hang out tonight. It's been fun doing so, but again, my son is starting to make noise again. And last time I just ignored him and he went back to sleep, which is fine, but you know, I don't like doing that too much. He's just a little bit fussy right now. So I'm going to go at least be close to him in case he needs me. So, you know, if he doesn't need me, then I may or may not regret having hopped off here. But we've been on for an hour and a half. It's been fun, guys. I appreciate your contributions in the chat, especially Matthew, Neil, and Ron, especially as of late here at the end of the stream. Good chilling with you guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night. and a good rest of your weekend if I don't see you tomorrow night. There is a chance that I'll hop on tomorrow night. I don't know what time, if I do. But enjoy your weekend. Have a great Saturday. See you soon, guys. Cheers.